All right, welcome to another Class H Radio 223 part-timers. This week, excuse me, I'm gonna do that a little bit throughout this lesson. My throat, once again, probably for the next couple of who knows when, it's going to be scratchy, but I do have some water here. Sidebar. Okay, we are gonna this week do it is obviously pre-recorded lessons, that's just a cycle, but also remember that just because it is Freedom Day on Saturday, that there is no public holiday in terms of your learning. So this is for this week, Saturday. We are in week where are we? Week 10, I think, right? Week 10. And we are continuing. We are on lesson 30, and 30 and 31 are going to be they bolted together. Just to note, when you do go through the slides on Cole Campus, 30 and 31 are the same because it's quite a long lesson, and we are continuing with creating great content, right? But in this lesson, particularly looking at it from the production point of view, so the producer, I am going to have a couple of videos that I've lined up, three videos that I want to play throughout this video, should I say? And then, yeah, so we're going to learn about again their everyday activities, I would say, their responsibilities, and what type of person it takes and personality it takes to be a great producer. All right. In addition to that, as we move to the next lesson as well, I will again refer back to the practical that I'm doing across all three. I'm using it across all three, obviously, the years, yeah, the 3 years, just in different, obviously, dilutions, right? Okay, so we'll do that again, just a bit of a throw forward to that practical programming and making content, part 14 of 15 out of Geller's book Beyond Powerful Radio, New York Focal Press edition, right? Chapter 11, page 40, 149 to 1458, and that's producers facing the blank page. Okay. So what I'd actually like to do, so beginning, middle, and end, let's stop the share here, and I want to go to a quick introductory piece to a little bit of a video. A second here. Let me just move over there. It was, which one was it? That everything is a day in the life, right? A day in the life. There we go. Yeah. Give it a second to move over the ads. Let's watch.
My name is Claire Darmody. I work as a senior producer for News Talk and I work for Communicore Media. So my role as a senior producer means that I run a team of researchers and producers and of course my presenter, and the most important part of the show, and I decide what goes on the show along with my team. We pick the topics that suit the type of show that we make, which is a lot of callers and interaction and texts and feature stuff, things that people are talking about. Every single day is different. You work with really fun, creative people. Like for any job that you love, there's lots of challenges. Sometimes because there's lots of different radio programs on the same station, it's who gets to do what person and who gets to get what guest. But mostly it's just finding the right person and making really great radio. So the sort of people that do well doing a role like mine as a producer, even as a researcher, I think have to be hardworking, creative, dynamic, resilient. I have to work very well with people and have excellent communication skills. So it really has to be pick up the phone and talk to people, not just send text messages or emails. We work in town, so we're really central, and I mean really in town. Like Stephen's Green is literally 3 minutes away. So really nice if you want to go out and meet someone for coffee or after work drinks. And so it's a very sociable place to work. The company culture at Communicore Media is really creative. We strive to be very inclusive, to be really kind to people and make sure everyone feels like they fit in. And there's lots of opportunities to move upwards and even sideways. And it's fun. It's a really fun, creative space to work in. Lots of like-minded people. So that's the culture here. So if this culture and the company sound like somewhere you'd like to work, get in touch.
Nice. Okay. Very nice. Okay. All right. So I wanted to start off with that kind of on a good note there. Not that I'm going to add with some bad notes there either. Continue with bad notes, but it's really nice to obviously hear someone also be very positive and welcoming in the radio space. You know, the kind of encouragement as well to work together. Being a producer for a number of years in my career as well. also showed me just that other side of programming in terms of how to be very obviously very organized one, but in control is another thing as well. Just before I go into that, but I wanted to just mention that kind of it's that camaraderie between producers as well. It's a camaraderie between producers from different stations. So we would be in contact with one another all the time. You know, we created our own kind of sub network to be able to help one another as well. To give the correct content, supply the correct content to the correct station as well. So if I had someone that came to me and they didn't fit the particular show that I was producing at that particular time, then I would pause either, obviously, first check whether there was another program on the station, another show, another presenter that might have been interested. If not, if it wasn't according to station format, right, and it wasn't according to our ethos, our mission statement, vision statement, brand, etc., right, then it would fit well to, let's say, I had a friend at SAFM, a friend Metro, a friend Five. And I would just say to them, listen, this is a great artist, great international artist I've been approached with, and it's going to definitely fit better with you. You go ahead and you use that. And they would do it for me as well. I do also remember being at events that, that all of the big stations and the smaller stations were invited to. And what we would do is would actually round drum. There's so many, let's say, celebrities to interview that you had to interview because it was like something like the Samas specifically. We would actually then share content. Would be like, okay, you go and get some boxes from whoever it is there, and I'll get some boxes from this side as well. Just that camaraderie, which is not. I don't think it's. Oh, I don't think it's one of those cognizant things that station managers are aware and allow. They actually would be completely against it, for whatever reason. And I know you're going to say to me, oh, Chris, but it's because it's an opposing brand, but it's not. Man, if you're not going to be able to use your content, just saying, then rather just give it to someone who actually can. And you're not helping out the competition. You're just being a good professional, right? As again, a symbiotic relationship that you're creating a bit of a community between you and your fellow co-professionals as well. But yeah, it's definitely not a thing that let's say station managers encourage in any kind of way. But being a producer was at first it wasn't enjoyable for me because I was on air for so many years, and I at that point in my career I really wanted to be on air and moving specifically to first work for producing Ryan Seacrest's show was very alien to me and kind of very displaced. I was displaced in where I was going. So, again, the company kind of forced you to go in a certain way. And then I really saw the benefit out of it. Obviously, you can find, a good and a bad thing out of everything, I suppose, or maybe not everything, but in that situation, I could have gone either a bad route and decided, oh, this is not going to help me at all, don't like this, whatever it is, been a bit of a child. But I actually really enjoyed that, and that was one of the pinnacle parts of my career to actually work for an international brand like that, and then move on, obviously, in terms of other ways of presenting and producing, moving onwards. But very again, just it was a different side to radio, and that's also what inspired me to write the word a word on radio, which is the textbook that was being used by Boston, like in 2015 to 2020, right? I was like, okay, there's so much more to know about programming, and there's so much more to know about content. There's so much more to know about how to approach interviews and how to, like, obviously package stuff and, different aspects of investigative journalism, whatever it may be, right? The producer perspective allows you to understand that you actually are, and you should be, even though that is not really the case in some stations. A producer must actually have more experience, right? More experience within the craft themselves to be able to lead a presenter down the correct way. Do you understand? And it's not the presenter, once again, doesn't know anything, but the presenter needs to put their trust in a producer and say, listen, like you go, like this is what we've discussed in the show, like as a team or whatever it may be. You go ahead and I trust you in getting the right person, prepping the right, obviously, questions, give me the right, obviously, context, and putting it all together nicely. It's not just the prep on paper; it's being able to go and edit all those particular sound elements that are needed on the show. If you need some sound effects, if you need some sound bites, if you need a pre-recorded interview, if you need to take callers, obviously, like when the show is actually happening, responding to certain texts, maybe selecting people from the WhatsApp line, and packaging those voice notes, so that the presenter needs to be well equipped, right? So empowered, and a good producer knows how to obviously produce for any type of presenter, because you got to be a bit of a chameleon to really kind of, oh man, like you got to you mold yourself according to how that presenter is, who they are, what they're able to do, their capabilities, but then also how you're going to elevate that person and that show, right? Just as a little bit of a rich beginning there, so you do understand the perspective of a producer. Let's look at what some of the theory says. So you are a show producer for a major market radio show, and when you have the opportunity to book your dream guest for an interview, well, you must formulate a plan B in case the guest actually does cancel, which they quite a lot of the times actually do. So, or otherwise, there are unforeseen problems, technical problems specifically. It could be a time zone thing as well. There's a couple of things that could go wrong technically, right? That'll be like a slap in the show's face at that particular moment. But the show producer needs to be on top of that type of stuff, right? So fill in the worksheet below for you yourself, right, with an appropriate answer. The success of the show depends on it. Who is this particular guest? And we did an example. Just want to take some water. So we did, I think we did, yeah, we did the example, right? In class that had to do with a particular piece was about interviewing two particular guests, right? And I gave you a really, really, I know very long, but obviously I like to be quite concise and complete, right? To when I do prep content so that everything is covered, right? But you would put the guest name as you saw, you know. We would have some context: who is he or she? Why is she here? What have they done? This particular person, what have they done? And why are these things important? Because it gives context to why it is to why it is that we are chatting to them today, right? So where does he or she live or come from? Present materials, book articles, records, etc. about the guest or host. Do some research, definitely, for some context, and then obviously how to then go and move forward, to have enough information to move forward to constructing your line of questioning for that particular guest, and then obviously once again creating the context around them, perhaps also some kind of form of interaction as well, and then knowing how to create obvious the end, kind of the end and post production stuff. And pre-production stuff according to this particular interview, right, or around this interview. So what you do need to do is obviously check with your presenter. I mean, you have to go and say, this is when you're not pitching in a way that you are. I mean, you are pitching the show to a presenter and saying, would you like this? I've thought about this. I've come across this. I've got this particular guest, or I've got these particular guests. Which one would you prefer us to actually get? And again, what applies in this situation to both people, both the producer and the presenter, is that you're not obviously making ready for yourself, but I do understand, and I have worked with some presenters that say to me, they're actually quite scared. For example, they're when I say scared, very, very, very cautious about doing certain types of content. For example, let's say news or current affairs, because they might not be familiar with it, and they don't really want to take that step at that particular time. And as a good producer, you should be able to go and construct content in such a way that if we are speaking about current affairs and it is relevant at some other point for the growth of the show, like you gotta be like, you gotta say, okay, I'm gonna package this in such a particular way that it's going to be a first step moving forward, so that you don't feel uncomfortable. But again, it is also the presenter's job to go and prep themselves, go obviously become a little bit more powerful, knowledgeable, etc., have that ownership around what they want to speak about or what they should speak about as well. But I have had that, and again, it is one of those things that you can't force feed your presenter. The presenter has to trust you. Once again, be like, I trust what you are telling me to do, or what you are advising me to do. But once again, every presenter must buy into the show and buy into their content and product. Okay. Are they interested? Why? What piqued your interest, right? So this is useful when trying to get a sense of what the host might like for further shows, right? You may fill in your opinions in Leo I don't even know what that means. I'm sorry. In line. That's not right. That makes sense. In line. Uh, sorry. In line of the hosts for the exercise for this exercise. All right. Um, yeah. Okay. My English badge, right? In terms of that, I didn't even know what that word was. So let's just say you may fill in your opinions in context or relevance. Uh, uh, relatable, relatability. In other words, the importance of the host for that exercise, the particular host that you're choosing as well. Okay, all right. What would you like from this particular guest? As I said to you before, you've got to have a particular angle. A host can come, sorry, a guest can come into studio for many different things to say, right? Quite like the call out, right? The call out can't be broad, and nor can the interview be broad. It can't be everything to do with exercise. It can't be everything to do with carpentry, or it can't be everything to do with gaming. So we want to know exactly what it is today that's relevant to the audience and the I'd say the target market is the audience, right? But also, again, that particular day in the week in the year, week in the month in the year, right? So, what would you like from the guest? Do you want him or her in the studio? Ideally, that is always better, right? But if they can do a phoner with you, and also perhaps maybe you only need them for one particular link, right? Just to touch base or to give a bit more context, as I always say. Always pre-recorded, right? So you're going to set up a time and a date, right? You're going to go to studio, you're going to record the interview, and then you're going to go and edit it, right, so that it can play out on the show. How long would you like the piece to be? And what is the plan B if it doesn't go according to what you have intended it to go according to, right? Producing is extremely tough. I mean, it's demanding, um, and it's much more demanding. I'm saying in comparison to obviously presenting, right? So, not to say that presenting is easy, but it's definitely easier than production, right? Because production is, once again, with all the elements that I have mentioned in the past, like I say, whatever, 10, 15 minutes, you can understand why. So, when the show goes well, the host gets the credit, but when it goes poorly, then the production side of the team is going to be blamed, right? Good producer roles are difficult to get and predominantly quite difficult. I'm saying they're quite scarce within the industry here in South Africa because only certain flagship shows ideally will always get a producer, as I've always said to you, like the Breakfast and the Drive. There'll be the admin producer that normally works across the brunch and the lunch show. There might be a nighttime producer, depending on what type of team you put together, but there'll also be a speciality producer that will do, let's say, will do all the production for the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday specialty shows, right? In particular, the top 40 will be included in that, right? So most demand long, stressful hours for the very little reward that you might get in terms of, let's say, acknowledgement. I'm saying public acknowledgement, but you're not supposed to be there for that. Also, a producer must not be someone that wants to be an on air producer. Like, it's not your job to be on air and to speak. You're supposed to be in the background and not trying to be like hungry or envious or desperate is the word I'm looking for to now want to speak on air, right? We've got presenters for that. We've got co-hosts. We've got contributors. Your job is to get the show like organized, right? Okay, most demand long, stressful hours, as I said there. Why? Because when everyone else goes home, I'm saying the rest of the team, you're going to be sitting at the station still working for a couple of hours to either before or after, right? Before or after they come to the station or they leave, you'll be working, right? So, although many music DJs and presenters produce their own shows, which we do, right? Outside of those brackets that I told you a little bit just now with the breakfast etc. show, and talk radio, obviously, that has a producer for every single show. A producer can add significantly to the success, significantly to the success of the show. Finding the right producer. So that's a relationship that also has to be correct between the presenter and the producer, right? Okay. As well as obviously the skill set must be correct for what type of show you're doing. You know, they've got to obviously have the right kind of temperament, the right kind of personality, obviously have the right amount of skills and experience as well. But the big thing also is how do you know that you need someone that is going to fit in with that particular host, and again what they have built as an ethos, or they want to build as an ethos around themselves centered as the personality, but them their product that they're busy putting together. Excuse me. Right, hosts and producers spend a lot of time together. So how do you find the right producer? And this is true. Like, I mean, you're either on the phone together for 1 to 2 hours a day. If you're doing a daily show, do you understand? Obviously, you spend 3 hours together in studio, and there's still a bit of that pre and post production outside of the studio. Also, I mean, you might be attending events together. Again, there's so many times the day that you are together, but it's nice if you have a good relationship. You like to be with I say your work friend. Do you understand in this capacity? Okay, a producer is someone who believes in your show, like so the presenter, and wants to make you and the product sound great. Remember what I said to you about that chameleon aspect? Well, that is not necessarily the same thing as agreeing with a host's point of view. Professionals can work with just about anyone, right? Professionals. Right. So if you do, normally what happens, normally this does happen at some other point in the kind of the infancy stage of putting two people that don't know one another on a show. Producer, co-host, host team, whatever it is, right? There's going to be some kind of friction at some other point in the beginning, because the thing is that we got two creatives here, and they have two very different quote unquote ways on how they have been approaching the product, the product life cycle. I would say even the product itself and the life cycle itself as well. The listener, but again, kind of that what they might interpret as quality or whatever it is that they have built in terms of understanding rapport between listeners and a listener. So we're going to have like conflict that's going to happen. But the biggest thing is, as you know, with when conflict does arise, like you've got to say something in the beginning so that it is sorted out, so that nothing grows or festers, it becomes toxic, whatever it may be, right? You got to build that up and be just a little bit of an adult. And again, yeah, just be a bit of an adult at the end of the day. And where there is, look, we live in a world of diluted power, right? And also, obviously, I say contextual power. You know what? If you're fighting quote unquote a brick wall, or what you perceive to be a brick wall, then do your job and do it according to what they want you to do. Do you understand? And so that you can get paid, and you can do if you do a job and it's according to someone else's, I say requirements, you're doing the job well. Do you understand? So again, a time and a place for everything. All right, grow your own. Great producers should be actually developed, right? I mean, you've got again the raw talent of a personality. Why wouldn't you do the same thing? I'm saying to you, you would apply the same kind of logic to building another creative within your programming team, which is your producer, right? So optimally, a great or good producer is a fit with the show and the host. And if you're hiring a producer, look for potential and promise, right? So that this person can actually grow, right? And it's not a kind of a one trick pony, can't only do great skits, can't only do current affairs, can't only just do the technical side of stuff, right? Has a bit of a, like I say, a creative opinion, a bit of a personality themselves as well, has a love for the medium, has a love for that show, has a love for that listener, whatever it is, right? Okay, ask, is this person bright, so good at handling pressure, fearless? Do not hire someone who wants to be on air. It usually doesn't work out, right? So the job of producing is more directing than acting, obviously, right? Okay, and I think that's where there's obvious stuff. Once again, I'm not gonna delve further to complicate things, all right? Successful producers who excel enjoy the behind the scenes aspect. They thrive, they love it, right? They, again, because that mic isn't some kind of like this weird elephant in a room where the for the producer, whenever they see someone turn on the mic, there's a little bit of green envy that is eating away at them at the bottom of their stomach or whatever it is. It's not like this person comes in, goes out to their home. When I say their home, it's in the production studio, it's in the control room, it's that type of thing, right? Often the best producers are our listeners first, people who enjoy the show. Let's not go crazy, right? Right. Okay. So we just okay. All right. Now, good time to quickly switch to a video. Right. So this one. Right, sorry. Oops. No, I want to start with the longer one and end with the short one. Here we go. There you go.
Let me show you how we do stuff around here.
Wait a second.
Actually, my department.
That's the right size. One be 32 minutes. I'll watch a little bit of it. Not too much. Not 32 minutes worth. That's for just let it load. It was a little bit shorter than this.
Hey,
Oh, there
it's
it is.
James Mulvaney today, back with another video on radio. And today I want to talk about the
Oh, my favorite. He's not my favorite, just saying. Uh, we go to radio quite a lot, yeah. Okay, he is very cool, very obviously, as we know, very knowledgeable.
underdog, that is the radio producer. Now, radio producers are crucial. Fundamentally, the producer will sometimes be completely off air, e.g. you may never hear them speak on the radio, but more and more these days we're hearing radio involved in part of the show, so they might be kind of like a second voice or a second opinion alongside the main presenter. But what does a radio producer do, and what's the point of having a radio producer? That's what I wanted to dive into today, and in a little bit we're also going to be talking to Sheena from Foundation.fm, who is a radio producer. She is their main producer. She focuses on creating a lot of their content output, so I really wanted to quiz her on what makes a good producer and kind of get some insider tricks. So, sounds good? Let's get straight to today's video. So if you're new to this channel, my name is James Mulvaney. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been working in the radio industry for the last 15 years, helping lots of people launch radio stations and get results with their radio stations and podcasts. I'm founder of radio.co, podcast.co and matchmaker.fm, all doing really interesting things in the audio spaces, so you can go check them out if you like. And also really passionate about helping people launch their radio careers and get established with online radio stations. Now, as I mentioned, radio producers, really crucial to the radio industry. So fundamentally, what does a producer do? They are responsible for things like drafting the contents of a show. So when you listen to the radio, you hear a presenter and they might be talking about specific things at different times of the show. It's normally the producer's job to say, okay, this is what the show is going to look like today. You know, say at 8 p.m. we're going to be doing, you know, whatever. We're going to be in a news bulletin, or we're going to be talking about a local event, we're going to be talking about a festival or a concert or whatever it might be that you're talking about at that specific time. So it's really the producer's job first and foremost to dictate what is going to be the output of that show. But the involvement of a producer really is much more detailed than that. They might be pitching ideas for shows themselves, they might be coming up with ideas for competitions. It's really the creative input that goes into a radio show or running a radio station that the producer is mainly responsible for, and it can be a really interesting and varied job. So whenever you're listening to the radio and you might hear a crazy feature or some call-in thing or something that's going on within the show, it's quite often the producer who will have actually concepted that idea and come up with it, and it's the presenter or the host's job to then actually present that and kind of make it sound cool, make it sound exciting. It's really just their job to take the idea and actually turn it into reality. That's the difference between a radio presenter or radio host or on-air talent or whatever you want to call them, and then the producer. But as I mentioned, the crossover between the two these days is a lot more common. I think in the old days you'd quite often get a producer who was sat literally in another room behind another piece of glass talking on like a talk back to the radio presenter in the studio, and they almost would be like completely separated. Nowadays, more than often, the producer presenter are sat in the same room together, in the same studio, just talking face to face, and quite often the producer, as I mentioned earlier, will actually be part of the show nowadays as well. The producer will often have meetings with station management. So, for example, if the station management are trying to push a particular artist, or they're running a big competition, or they're running having issues with a certain type of advertiser or whatever, the producer will ultimately feed that information back into the show. So making sure that the output of the show that they're responsible for, or the shows that they're responsible for, are kind of in line with what the management are trying to achieve in terms of the business model of that radio station. So again, really, really important. Obviously, if you've got a sponsor who's coming in saying, look, we're supporting this show, you need to make sure that the content of the show is really in line with what the sponsor is trying to achieve as well. So again, producer's job sometimes is to link the commercial aspects of the radio station to the kind of the creativity, the fun aspects, what you want to hear as a listener, and even sometimes the music itself as well. The other thing that producers spend a lot of their time doing these days that people perhaps might not consider is the behind the scenes stuff. So I'm talking about like editing. So perhaps the show has a podcast, or you're kind of clipping out sections of the best bits of the show for social media, or updating the social media channel while the show is actually going on. Again, a lot of these responsibilities will often fall down to the producer, or sometimes the assistant producer. Sometimes you might have an intern who's working alongside them, or someone who's more of a junior level. Again, just like with a lot of roles in different industries, producers, you can have executive producers who generally are responsible for multiple shows across the station, the producers who are working on each individual show, and things like assistant producers or assistants, or tech ops, or admins who are kind of more responsible for the individual components of a show itself. So different layers, and again, the bigger radio companies will have more layers of management. Smaller radio stations, you might have one producer who's sitting across multiple shows, and quite a lot of the time with small radio stations, the presenter as well is sometimes also the producer. So you might be producing your own show if you're a presenter or a host, which basically means you're kind of responsible for manning the ship, driving it forward, repairing it, doing everything that there is to do with the ship, which can again become quite involved. So what I thought I'd do now is talk.
As a note, he said ship, not what the annotation said. Yeah, ship with a P.
To Sheena, who is a producer for Foundational FM, a fabulous station that we work with in London. They are a predominantly female-led radio station, and we went and met them last summer. They've got a really cool setup down there. So here's what Sheena had to say about the role of a radio producer.
So my name is Sinead Brooks, and I'm a producer here at Foundation FM, the female-led radio station, which is on air 10 a.m. till 10 p.m, Monday to Friday. So day to day, I, create content. I call myself the annoying or not cool auntie who's just in the room making sure everything goes to plan. I schedule, I book guests in, I'm just like everyone's like right hand really if they need anything, and a bit of everything really. My secret sauce is to just not stress too much. Like with radio, it's so fast paced that every day it's normal to stress, and really just take a step back. We're not saving lives, we're here to have fun. And I find in radio everything does fall into place, so just not to stress too much and be organised as much as you can, but don't over organise, because there's days I over organise and then everybody, you get a guest that cancels or something like that, and you're like, oh, there was me being over organised and now don't need to do that anymore. But yeah, secret sauce, don't stress. My thing is to tell them, you kind of talk them through their first links, and then I kind of say, just act like you're talking to me. We're friends now, let's go for it together. And then after like the second link, third link, you usually find that people forget they're on radio and they are just having fun, so. Just good energy, and good energy doesn't always mean like the loudest or the funniest or the quickest. It's just being like fully yourself and knowing what it is that you want to achieve in your show. So if it is you want a show about just music knowledge, make sure you are the one that has the best music knowledge. Or if you just want to do a show where it's high energy, then come with that high energy, but just be like 100% yourself, and naturally you'll just fall into it and go with the flow, and like listeners will hear that, and that's what will make them engage. Advice would be, make sure to do like your research. Like, don't just go to a radio station and be like, I want to be on air. Like, why do you want to be on air, and why do you want to be on that radio station? So even if it's only listening to one or two shows, find one that stands out to you, so then when you're then emailing those stations, the person reading will be like, oh, okay, they actually rate us, they don't just want to be on air. Because there's so many people that want to do radio, but you then ask them a question about radio and they're like, oh, I don't know. And it's like, but what are your reasons for wanting to do radio then? So I think definitely just do your research and really find what the reasons are why you want to do radio, and if you do want to do radio, what kind of radio do you want to do, and then go search out for that specific type. What I love is just how it is a safe space. Like, sometimes you don't really realise that until you're having a conversation. And I was saying how many times we've come into work and you want to cry or sad, and here you can do that and not be judged for it. Not saying I come in every day and cry, but you're not judged for it. We all just talk about, and if you have an issue here, it's not your issue, it's everyone's issue. Like, we'll figure it out together, so no one should stress. Like, we do that with like presenters, producers. There's no need, we're meant to be having fun in radio, so there's definitely that. So you can listen in on foundation.fm. You should also check out our Instagram, because we're always telling you what's going on and what guests we have, and on our Twitter, and just stay in the loop to know what's happening, so yeah.
So, had a really great time chatting to Foundation.fm last summer. Be sure to go and check them out. They're doing some really interesting things. And thanks for Sheena for talking through her role and giving us some tips and advice on what she does on a day-to-day basis. I think production and going into radio as a producer, fascinating. There's some really interesting things you can do. It allows you to express yourself creatively and bring some really cool ideas to the table. Radio shows would not be as good without producers. I'm curious to know if you're a radio producer, or if you're thinking about going to radio in a behind the scenes capacity. Let me know in the comments below. Or if you've got any tips for people who want to go into radio as a producer, let me know in the comments. More videos like this coming soon, so remember to hit that like button if you enjoyed this, and also press subscribe and turn on your.
All right, we know that drill. Okay, good. I hope you learned something from that. That was cool. Very nice. I'm just going to stop that share over there, and I'm just going to go back to this lesson so we can close it off, and then we'll end off with that short video that you had a little bit of a squiz at, right? that is lined up there. Okay. What we want to just remember as we're going through is obviously keep the good ones, keep the good producers there in your radio station. Good producers are often forced to go, sorry, to TV or leave the industry if they want to get paid what they are worth, and that is so true, right? Just because and this is the reality of life. Obviously, you know your presenter is going to be paid a lot more than you're going to be paid. But as their here's and that's fine and that's cool. That's the reality of life. But as the presenter gets more money, the producer should also be paid like they be given a raise because they are the reason or a massive reason as to why this presenter is obviously becoming more popular, is becoming more, like I say, be more valuable to the station as well. So the producers should be paid a higher, a higher amount as it obviously aligns to the presenter that they work with. But that sometimes does not happen, and producers obviously get fed up and they just go to another station should the job be available, right? So there is very little producer training or job security available. Yep, if you find a good producer, do whatever it takes to keep him or her. And a good producer can contribute tremendously towards making your show more powerful, obviously, right? A bad or angry one can damage you, absolutely, because they can do very little work. They can do a messy work. They can do like but the thing is, they're going to have to answer to well, like their actions, right? Because yeah, I mean, I don't know. Um, you can't just get away with that as well. But the thing is that when the damage is done on air, the damage is done on air, all right? Okay. Please make them obviously make a producer, make everyone else that you do feel that's important to your team, which is everyone, right? Make them feel good and valuable, right? Today's producers are tomorrow's program directors, ain't that nothing but a thing, right? Share the wealth. So when you become a host, treat the producers obviously nicely, you get the glory. They are underpaid. You get the credit. They get yelled at to share your freebies, the books, the free tickets, and free meals. Go ahead and give it to your producers as well and give them some honest feedback. Have great, obviously productive feedback sessions with both your program manager and obviously on a daily basis or show to show basis. Like you have to be looking at what can be improved, what went wrong, obviously like a kind of a snap crit as well. Avoid the manufactured hours. So the closer the show sounds to a real life, right, or to real life with genuine people having real conversations, obviously the better it's going to work. But as I've mentioned before, well prepped shows allow for this to actually happen. So don't, as a producer, don't force the presenter. No, you must say this first and this second and all these three things and this, unless it's obviously station promotions or whatever it is, right? I get that. But let them at least take the prep that is well prepped, well constructed. Let them own it and turn it into something that is going to sound really cool and authentic and again rich and relevant when it comes out of their mouth with their obviously take on it. Okay, so to try to avoid easy stories from headlines and press releases. Yeah, all right. Try to think out the box. If you wouldn't be talking about this off air, why are you putting it on air? Listeners prefer programs that sound as though the conversation could just be as easily be taken or be taking place off air. Never be boring, right? So, let's make it super big, super big. Never be boring, right? So, even now, I'm going to give you an example it's just running through my head at this very moment. Like, so this week, I actually do want to focus on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees, right? So it was Mary J. Blige and Cher, and there's Cool and the Gang that are in there. There's some other cool, there's Ozzy Osbourne was there as well. And everyone is going to, not everyone, but most people are going to cover or mention the rock and roll inductees, because it's a massive thing as well. And these are obviously great artists, right? So if I want to go and I want to put it on my show, am I going to just mention it? No. Am I going to just talk to you about what Variety magazine has spoken about it? No. I want to go and maybe, like, for example, I'm just going to put another angle to it. And I would take, let's say, let's say three of those artists, and I would play, okay, one of their greatest songs each. But in addition to that, I'm going to put in like the very first interview each one of these artists actually did, just to kind of like prefix that buffer before we play every song that we are going to play from that triple play there before each song, just a snippet, a 30 to 45-second snippet from, again, their very first interview to show kind of that, like, this is where they started, and man, here they are right now. So, that's not so original, but definitely it's not boring, right? And it isn't exactly a headline thing. I'm not just taking, like I said, the headlines of, well, who won what and who was inducted. I want to be able to look at prepping content with a very simple, original point of view. Please get into that mind space of trying to practice a lot and applying yourself and how to create very simple steps upwards, right? So elevating that content in any way that you can, right? It's fine to use the internet, obviously, right? Prep services, current events, news stories. Producers should also bring their own original stories, so anecdotes, experiences, conversations, whatever it may be, to the program. Producers should read widely, listen to the competition, definitely generate ideas based on life, as I said there. It's easy to Google guests, and you should go Google your guests, right? The whole magic comes in and how to obviously secure them, which guests to obviously secure, also to know which parts of their background are going to be important, or what they currently are busy with are going to be important to how you construct that particular interview to be really cool and obviously fit for what the station really wants to hear, or is not the station, the listener, right? So do not undermine your credibility by presenting facts that you haven't checked, all right? And even more so, it really is even more so. Don't go do that to your presenter. That's really bad form. So you're gonna go and let's say put some garbage together and then you're going to put their name like through kind of the gutter, because you're premeditating the fact that they are going to actually go out there and say something false or say something that is fake at the end of the day, right? Don't do that in general, right? Why lie? All right, so know your source, please. There are different ways that we can be encouraged to go and find content in life, right? Your life, bring in an idea from your own life, what you're currently going through. I know you're going to tell me, oh, it's studies, studies, studies. Maybe it's really not. Like, you know that you yourself, and particularly the part timers are working, right? So it's not only just studies and work either. Like, you're a very complex human being, and as I said in class, you have to have these conversations, step out in life, put a couple of hours in your week to actually go and be in places and be with people that you don't know, right? And you're not familiar with, so that you can broaden your kind of like your experience and your perspective and your opinions and your again, right? To how you can become a better product for your station, better product for your listener, service them well, right? So overheard, observed. So you're listening to other people, you're watching other people, seeing how they react. So you're a little bit of a pariah, as I always say, right? Have a look at people while you're waiting in a queue, while you are walking through a shopping center, while you are getting your own groceries, while you're filling up with petrol, while you are doing your mid morning jog or whatever it is, your afternoon jog, going to the gym, whatever it is, you're attending a family gathering. There's so many things, obviously, carrying on and on, but really, you need to like. There's endless amounts of opportunities to just watch people, listen to people, because the watching we could maybe misconstrue for something else, right? At certain, like in certain instances. but to listen exactly what they're doing, what they're saying, will give us a good. It's a good source for content. Okay. News that you talk about off air. So one item from the news that you would actually talk about with another person in real life, right? In each case, find the universal angle. So a new way of seeing things for all these various kind of very large scale of opportunities and options that you'll see here. Okay. When we say use your life, right? So we'll break this down. Using your life and making it relatable. Once again, so you went through something, you felt something, you learned something, you experienced something, you talked about something, you're struggling through something, right? Is very obviously particular to you. We do want the host, I'm saying the host, right? So when you're producing, let's say you want to do a personal point of view, you can't make your experience theirs. You're going to take your experience and then obviously adapt it to what the host would actually have obviously a realistic connection to, right? So you're going through, let's say, and I mentioned this in class, let's say you're going through creative burnout and it's only April or whatever it may be, right? But creative burnout can be influenced by like a number of different things, so as mentioned on many self-help sources or TED Talks, whatever it may be. It could be psychological, it could be psychosomatic, it could be social, it could be mental, it could be professional, it could be so many different things, right? That we can bring in and make and have a conversation about, see where the presenter is at, and definitely that is the source is knowing that you are experiencing this very particular and very kind of out of season burnout, right? Bringing that to the show and definitely knowing, we know that a lot of people are either dealing with burnout, have just come out of burnout, have been kind of like plagued by psychological burnout for 3 or 4 or 5 years, whatever it may be, and they would talk to you about it, right? So anyway, the example of let's say the host had promised his wife he would paint the garage, but because he preferred to watch football on Sundays, they got into a huge fight. He and his producer decided that the paint, the garage, and the argument were his private life, but there was a universal angle to work into the show, and the producer found a psychologist who has just psychologist has just to for completeness, right? He has just published a study on male-female relationships, and it seemed most men didn't care whether a woman gained weight was a lousy cook. What they hate was nagging, right? And why? Because their mothers nagged them. The topic went on for 2 hours with lots of humor, right? And it took a talented producer to help find the universal angle, how it applies. Remember, I said to you how it applies to another person, the presenter. Then obviously, how does that apply to the listener, right? Okay, formatics count. So it is important to have a producer who understands the logic behind, should I say, formatics, knowing exactly why timing is important, knowing exactly the why all elements are important in the show, knowing exactly how they make your show better. Lots of producers know the basics, but are never told why they matter so much, right? So why it's crucial to mention the station's name, the frequency for each caller goes to air and to reset the topic every few minutes. In other words, to recap, right? Before and after commercial breaks. These things, yeah, the producer needs to know this definitely because they're going to include that in the prep and also be vigilant about the presenter that is going out and that's going to do these things. And so they can also be the other ear that's saying to them, no, listen, yeah, like remember, like you said this or you did this or whatever it is. And most of us that go on air we also get lost in that moment. So if we're doing it in solidarity, we'll often forget that, to be quite honest. We'll forget what we just said and how we just said it unless we go back and we listen to it. But normally we'll just move on to the next link, the next thing, and the next thing, unless it's a major problem or something that we did wrong that won't really stand out to us. It's good to know and be reminded that we stick to the formatics because the structure of anything in life obviously leads to like a better or higher quality product, right? It is important to remember that we work with ratings that are based on recall. Memory is not reliable. If people don't remember what they ate for breakfast, how can they remember what they were listening to at 7:15 in the morning last Thursday? Right. So you have to remember that when you are recapping just a couple of minutes ago, really important for the person that just also came in, but also the person that's busy listening throughout the half hour, 45 minutes. Just get them back up to speed, see how far we are in the conversation so that they feel also that there's movement or direction or, again, any more reason to stay there. Staff needs to understand the importance of helping the listeners retain your station details by repeating them again and again and again. Let's look at Geller's 10 producer commandments to close up the lesson. One, know the host or presenter and his or her audience as well. Do not cover the host's air shift, but be faithful listening, be a faithful listener to it. So obviously listen to your own show, right, that you're producing. Never put a boring caller or guest on air. Have only one director or programming manager giving you input. Pay close attention to details so that your host and presenter will not have to. And remember your address list or database and keep it up to date. Six, be organized, able to easily and quickly locate a contact and find the links or the things that your host or presenter put down and loses. It really does happen. Never throw away a phone number, email, or address, or a good takeout menu, right? Anything can be content. No, the internet world and the real world, read and live in them both. Have a life outside the radio station. It's going to serve you, obviously, in show prep 24 hours a day, every day, providing you with creative topics and angles nobody else is doing. Study the station and learn to do everything. The payoff will go to the producer, right? Who can run the board, edit and assemble audio, set up remotes, screen calls, make coffee, plan events, or travel. Foster goodness or good relationships, goodness in good relationships, right? Between your host and show and the rest of the radio station, especially the news and sales departments, right? Everyone. Don't say especially, just everyone, right? Obviously, we know why the news, the sales, etc., contribute to your show directly, right? But we want to make sure that we are a team player, right? Let us end off with that last video. Excuse me. Right, this one over here. Let's quickly have a look here. Okay.
Because I like music so much, I actually started producing music for a lot of local artists. And then from there, I guess it was a gradual progression towards becoming a radio producer. From now to 3rd August 2013. Radio is the only medium which plays music for what it is. I mean, TV, it gets distorted with all the music videos and all that. It's about theatre of the mind. Some of my daily responsibilities included planning for the show, whatever my breakfast boys JJ and Kev talk about on air, ensuring what they say is compliant. We plan before the show like on a monthly, weekly and a daily basis. I guess one thing I like the most about my job is you get to meet new people every day. Not on an everyday basis, but we get a lot of different guests that come through our studios. Plus, you get to interact with a lot of Malaysians. I mean, whatever topic we do, we get a lot of different input on how people think. And what you might think is a norm might be something completely different from what another person thinks.
Move the audio. Like it's going softer.
Say Craig David is down in Malaysia. We'll definitely try and get him into our studios. Instead of just getting people requesting for interviews, we also do a lot of outsourcing. That means we find who's coming down in Malaysia and who's doing what.
Something's weird with this. Just give me a second.
My day begins at 5 in the morning.
There we go.
I come to work at 5 in the morning. It starts at 4. And from there, once I get into the studio, I scour the web, seeing for any latest stories or any latest developments that's happening, so that we are always up to date with the information that we're using. Because what we do to plan the day before might not be relevant in the morning. One of the challenges you face as a producer is dealing with hostile guests sometimes, and you have to make sure they are okay to go on air with JJ and Kev. Also, one of the main challenges I face is, and JJ and Kev are great guys, but you have to make sure whenever they go on air, they sound as happy and chirpy as possible. Exactly. People kind of know their football stuff. Producer should be creative. I mean, there's no qualification to be a producer. There's no such thing as you go for a degree in something and then you become a producer. At the end, if the person is creative, I guess has to be well organized in terms of planning for shows, and I guess that's about it, because it's just about the creative input on how. I mean, if a story about fashion, you could spin it and turn it around in a creative angle, which is entertaining for listeners, then that's what makes a good producer. Every day is something new. When we talk about a certain topic, or it's like my job is fun because you get to scour Facebook to find new information, or you keep track of Twitter to find new information. So it's not so much of the boring desk job. It's more about the thinking and keeping up to date with the latest trends. Quite a good work-life balance. Because for me, although even let's say in the evening when I'm hanging out with my friends, sometimes I think about what we're talking about at the mamak shop, because that might be good content on air as well. And once you go out, you experience the different things that is happening around you. That's what people relate to, and that's what people want to hear on air. Some things that happens in my job, I guess everything that happens in the studio, it's just every day it's unpredictable. We get a whole different bunch of callers every day. We got our regulars who call us every time and entertain us. What JJ and Kev do on air is so spontaneous, as much as the information is prepped, but when they present it, it's spontaneous. So that always keeps you, motivated and challenged in a sense. I guess if you like doing something, go for it. Because for me, I studied law, but I'm a radio producer right now. Because I'm more driven by the creative industry. So, if you like something, just go for it.
Okay. Right, let's end it over there. Okay, good stuff. All right, so that is the end of lesson 31, 32. Well, no, 30 and 31. There we go, 30, 31. And I will see you in the next one.